Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Let's Talk It Out podcast. I'm your host, Alec Lifshos, a.k.a. Trey Busy. It's a beautiful Thursday evening. It is the first of the month. It's August 1st, people. This year is flying by. I'm actually pretty appreciative of that. A lot of people love the summer. Me personally, I think the summer is overrated. Fall is my favorite season for several reasons. Fall represents football and basketball coming back, obviously, as a man's perspective. But fall is a happier time of my life. I like seeing all the colors outside on the trees. It relaxes me. I like bonfires. I prefer wearing hoodies over wearing jean shorts and all that stuff. I'm a fall guy. You know, if we had to pick a season for me, I'm a fall guy. So if August could just fly by, I'll be greatly appreciative of that. So before I go on too much further about the seasons, I would like to thank my mom for coming on the Let's Talk It Out podcast last week. She was great. She hopped in and we talked about stressors and different levels of stress and not only that, but we talked about some of the positive things that could come from stress, that could come from change. It was a great conversation. I did a lot of listening because my mom is great at talking. That's where I get it from. I'm kidding. Mom, sorry if you hear this. So yeah, I just really want to thank her for coming on. So I'll say hi to the chat room. What's going on, everybody? What is going on? So before I go on too much further, I have a very, very special guest tonight. She's considered one of the OGs of the Let's Talk It Out podcast because she's always giving great feedback in the chat room.
Oh.
And she has a great story to share. So I'm going to introduce Jackie Ingola.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening and having me on tonight. I'm super excited to be here. A little bit anxious, but it's a mental health podcast, so here we are.
It's okay to be a little anxious, Jackie. A lot of people are anxious when they're on a live podcast. There's no, commercial breaks. There's no editing when it's live. We are having a conversation, but you could just pretend it's just me and you talking. That
sounds good.
Even though you don't really have to pretend that is what it is. But anyway, thank you for coming on tonight. When you reached out to me about 2 or 3 months ago, just because you were interested in the podcast and you wanted to listen in on it. And I was, I gave you the information, and ever since then you have been pretty active in the chat room. You've been coming in and you've been giving good feedback. Again, like I said, I see everything going on in there, and I do greatly appreciate you coming in, and I appreciate you sharing it with others so they can listen to it. That's what it's all about. I want the word to get spread out there as much as possible. That's the biggest thing.
Yes, definitely. And I'm glad that I can come in there and support other people because I think it's such a positive place, and everyone that's in the chat is so positive. So it's nice that we can kind of feed off of each other and, have that sense of community where everyone's comfortable and we can give each other advice and remember how to stay on track.
Exactly. So I want to ask you, Jackie, first of all, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. It's been a little bit of a rough week. I've had some rough sleep, which generally, if I don't sleep good, really kind of triggers my anxiety. So I have to push a little bit harder throughout the day, but it's Friday tomorrow. So we've made it through another week, which is a blessing in and of itself. So here we are.
Absolutely. So I want to ask you, Jackie, you reached out to me because you said you wanted to share your story.
Yes.
You want to talk a little bit about what's it like in the life of Jackie Ingola?
So I was diagnosed with mental health probably roughly around 20 years ago. I'll be 36 next week. It's my birthday, which is exciting. And for the most part, I think that I lived amongst a lot of let a lot of stigmas affect me when it comes to mental health when I was younger, that I didn't want to go to therapy. I didn't want to take medication. I just wanted to self-manage, which then eventually into my adulthood turned into self-medicating. So at some point that wasn't working out that well for me. So, it was last year really that I kind of hit what I like to call a breakthrough, not a breakdown. And I reached out to my parents and I told them, I'm really at the point where I need some serious help. I've gone on too long taking care of this myself. So I went and checked myself into a behavioral health center. I was there for about a week as an inpatient. And then I continued intensive outpatient therapy for, I want to say over a month maybe. which I really enjoyed as well, because I feel like it goes back to that like sense of community where like in the midst of being depressed, it's very easy to like lay in bed and be like, no one else feels like this. I'm so alone. Like, why me? It's not fair. And being around a bunch of other people that come from different lifestyles and different backgrounds, but like we're all sitting there for the same purpose, and to be able to physically feed off of each other that way, is a good reminder that like it's not true to tell yourself those things. Like you're not alone. And, it's nice to, in the midst of that I took away one of the things that was important to me was to designate people in my life as a support. So you can pick anybody, I guess, that is important in your life. I specifically asked my mom and my dad. And the way that the process worked for me was coming out of my recovery from the hospital. I had told them pretty much specifically a list of like, these are my triggers. These are my warning signs and my symptoms if I'm starting to really go downhill again. And like, this is what I need and I want from you. Because for me, sometimes I just need to vent and like, I visualize it as like a regurgitation of like the words are just coming out of my body. And then I feel like I'm not harboring it and holding it in anymore is like my visualization of it. But for my parents, like they want to solve a problem for me, but it's not that I need a solution. Sometimes I just need to vent and talk to somebody. So it was like all those little things that we kind of had to go through to get to the place that I'm at today. But I think it's really important to like have those supports put in place in your life because it's hard sometimes to reach out and ask somebody for help. But when you designate somebody that's willing and ready and says that this is who they want to be in your life, I feel like it makes it that much easier to kind of like put your pride aside and reach out to them because they've offered that assistance to you. So that's been really beneficial to me. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's where I'm at today. I'm in a much better place than I was last year. Last year really was kind of like a bottom out for me. But like I said, I really kind of just went and took care of things and didn't want to be on medication for probably 20 years. I was on and off stuff maybe, but really not taking as good of care of myself as I should have been. So that's how I ended up where I did, which is okay. I tell people all the time that if I have to go back there every couple of years and check myself back into that hospital, that's not a failure. I'll do it every time if that's what keeps me alive. I don't feel like I failed because I had to go check myself in there, or if somebody has to take me there at some point because I get really depressed like that again, it's keeping me alive. So I'm never going to feel bad about it. It's part of my recovery. So
First of all, before I give any input on that, Ashley Simone says, "Happy early birthday, Jackie." She's happy to be here listening to your story.
oh, thank you.
Justin's in the chat room. He's agreeing with you. He said, "Man, everything she's saying right now." Whew. Yeah, he's agreeing with you.
Hey, Justin.
Justin's another one of the OGs from the podcast. So I want to say, when you were checked into the hospital, one of the main reasons or one of the things I've observed is a lot of times people are a little bit more inclined to injure themselves or be self-harm are checked into the hospital. Like what made your parents? You said you talked to your parents about it and you guys came to the conclusion to go to the hospital for you. That would be the best thing
Yes.
for you. What was going on for you to feel like that was the best option to be?
Well, I always tell everybody, like, I'm super grateful that I have, like, the gift and the curse that, like, physically, all of my family genetically is super healthy, but mentally, all of us have mental health. So I think that they come from a place where they understand a little bit more, and I have a little bit more support where, like, people that have never felt anxious don't really necessarily understand because they haven't felt it. But I had gotten to the point where I had started to come up with a plan for suicide. I hadn't attempted. But I've always been super self-aware of like, these are the triggers that are happening, or like I've been laying in bed. I haven't showered for 5 days. Like I'm waking up anxious and in sweat every day. Like something's wrong, but I would get stuck at that point. Like I just didn't have the tools to move past that to recover and keep moving forward. Like I would just get stuck in that negative space where like, oh, well, I laid in bed all day yesterday. Like why get up today? And then next thing I know, it's been 6 weeks and I've not done anything and I feel horrible. So I was really aware that I had gotten to the point where like, if I don't speak up and say something to my parents today and have them bring me to the emergency room for a psych evaluation, I might potentially go through with this plan. And is that really what I want? Or like, am I just putting myself in a space where like I've self-medicated for so long that now I've made things worse for myself? So I reached out to them and my mom took me to the emergency room and then they admitted me, of course.
Yeah, so again, I mean, for you, a lot of times people just, these things happen and they don't realize they're happening. They don't realize that they're putting themselves in situations to feel isolated or feel like, things don't, just they get to a point of feeling alone, and it's like everything seems like there's no end. Like everything just becomes like a repetitive cycle. Like you said, you before you realize you've been in bed for 6 weeks. Like everything just doesn't have a meaning no more.
Yeah, and it's easy to get there. And I think that like I was very blessed that like when I went into the hospital, I noticed how like what a different mentality I had because I sent myself there as opposed to somebody who was forced to go there and maybe they weren't ready to like, it's hard to succumb to the fact that like you have depression or you have anxiety or, recently while I was in the hospital, I got diagnosed with bipolar too, which I feel like is a whole other thing where people joke all the time. And they're like, oh, you're so bipolar. Like, and it's this big joke, but like people are legitimately bipolar and that like that could be super offensive to somebody. Like I don't take it super personally, but I could understand where somebody else would. So like I was being medicated wrongly too on top of it. Like somebody that's bipolar can't just go on antidepressants. That will make them worse. They have to be on a mood stabilizer and then go on an antidepressant to kind of like level them out. And I didn't know at that time that I was bipolar. So months previous, I was trying to help myself. I knew I was starting to get depressed again and like things were off. And I was just going to like my regular doctor to like kind of half-ass it. And she had put me on like 3 different antidepressants that I had tried before. And like each one was just causing me to like spiral out of control. Like I was getting super suicidal. Like one day I got in my car and I like drove off. I threw my car in the back seat. I was like bawling hysterically. But that's like another thing that I do that like I always reach out to somebody when I'm switching my medication or I'm going on something new. I let the people around me know because in the midst of all of that chaos, like I didn't realize I was acting like that. And then as soon as my mom or someone else was like, you seem like you've been really off or like you were crying hysterically yesterday. We know that you went on this new medication. Like maybe that's the cause. And then I'm like, oh yeah, like maybe that is it. But like in the midst of it, I wasn't thinking about that. So, but it was what I was saying originally. My point that I want to go back to was I felt so bad that when I put myself into the hospital, my mentality was, I've lived like this long enough. I'm going to be here for as long as I need to be here for to like leave here with the tools that I need to like better my life. And like, I need to change my mentality that like, yes, I might have to work a little bit harder, but if that's what keeps me happy and like keeps my energy good and keeps me mentally in the space that I need to be in, like I shouldn't feel negatively that I have to do this extra work. And a lot of people that I was there with were just like, when am I going home? When am I going home? And for me, it was like, I'll go home when I'm ready to go home. Like I am here for a reason and I need to take every tool away from it that I possibly can. So I think that's why I kind of had a different experience that time than previous years. Cause I've been hospitalized before as well. So
Justin said that you're sharing his story right now.
Oh, I mean, I'm always surprised. Like it's a lot of people's story. And I feel like a lot of people that's why it's important to be on here. There is this huge stigma that people don't want to talk about these things. And it goes back to them. That's why you feel alone. And we shouldn't be ashamed to like talk to somebody about it. Even there's been people in my life that I've like explained these things to and have taken it really negatively and like have made me feel kind of like second guess, like, oh, is something really wrong with me? Like this isn't really normal that like I have A, B, and C and I have anxiety. But like that's just somebody else's opinion and potentially that's somebody that like served a purpose in my life and doesn't need to anymore. Like I don't need to feel bad because somebody can't empathize or sympathize with what's going on inside of me. But like that's not ever going to stop me from telling the things that I've been through because if I touch one person, that's all that matters to me. Like it was worth me going through everything that I've gone through to help one other person. Then I'm grateful to go through everything that I've gone through up until this point.
Ashley says it's such a blessing to have support from your parents because I don't have that. Yeah, so for you to have support, I mean, granted, I could reach out to either one of my parents to get support as well. But like you said, everybody doesn't have that. Some people only have one parent in their life. Sometimes the parent that's in their life doesn't really care about that. They don't care. They don't care about that. They always push that aside when people come to them with being honest about what's going on with them. Sometimes they're like, oh, I posted a meme earlier. I made it. It was a joking meme. It's like a picture of the guy. It's like that Flex. You guys seen the cheesy Flex Seal commercials, right? So it's like a guy, he's like a flex tape. So over the guy, I put, this is the black community. And like it was like a giant tank of water that was leaking. And over the water, I put the chronic depression, anxiety, PTSD, bipolar disorder. And then at the bottom, it's like a little picture of the guy putting the tape over the water jug. And it says, I'll pray for you. That's the way for fixing it. I'll pray for you.
Yeah, I like that.
So, I mean,
it's something.
Yeah, I mean, thanks, Thanks. That kind of feels like you're getting brushed off a little bit when people say that, I'll pray for you.
But sometimes that's all that people have to offer, maybe, it's better than nothing. Maybe it's not what we need, but then we have to go and like find somebody else that's going to be able to give us what it is that we need, I think. And I think that everybody, if you don't have that person in your life right now, but you're open to allowing that the universe to bring that person into your life as your support, and you don't have your parents, that person will come along. Like, I think a lot of times we block our blessings when we get in like such a negative headspace that like then we miss out on those opportunities where I'm the person, like, I stop and talk to everybody. I talk to people in the gas station. I make friends with the people that work at the gas station, because you never know. Like, I stopped in the gas station up the street from my house one day, and believe it or not, the girl that worked up there, I had talked to her maybe a couple other times randomly, and I just randomly stopped up there one night to check on her, and her sister had just tried to commit suicide the day before. And like, there was a purpose that I stopped up there. Like, and I feel like I allowed the universe to bring those things to me. And because I've been through the things that I've been through, I feel like I was able to give her advice, like, from, I understand how she feels, but also like the perspective of being that person, and like what it is potentially that I needed to hear from somebody, that like, you don't have to solve it for her. Like, you need to just tell her that like, what I'm here to support you, and like, you need to tell me what it is that you need and what you want from me. Like, we think a lot of times what works for us is going to work for somebody else, but common sense isn't that common. So I feel like it's very important to have those open lines of communication, even to like let your family members or let your friends know, like, this is what I need from you in my mental health. Like, this is what I want from you. Because if we don't say specifically and break it down to point A, B, and C, it makes sense to us that we need those things, but that just might not make sense to somebody else. And then it's easy to go into that mental space of like, well, no one cares about me. Like, no one gets it. No one's ever going to understand what it feels like. And it's not true. It's just that communication needs to be processed a little bit differently, I think. That's how I feel.
So, Jackie, there's a point during the last spill when you was talking about how when you were diagnosed with bipolar disorder.
Uh,
I, I want you to tell me. I mean, I want to dive a little bit deeper into that. You said that there's a stigma around that, and I want you to go ahead and tell me what it's like to live, with this disorder. Like, what does it change about your day-to-day interactions, or how you connect with people, and then also tell me like the stigma, as far as like, we get it, people joke around with it, like, oh, are you bipolar or something, because they say
yeah,
that,
like your mood swings,
they say that when you get mad about something. It's like, are you
Yeah.
bipolar or something?
Yeah, like, you were just happy and now you're mad. You're obviously bipolar. And like, yes, they're joking, but like, I am really bipolar. So luckily I don't get offended by it, because I've, in 36 years, learned to kind of brush things off and like, no, it's not a personal attack. And like, if somebody wants to be a jerk, that's a personal problem, not my problem. So like, I'm not going to let it affect me negatively. Um, but with bipolar, from what I know, you really can't get diagnosed until you're 25 or older. So that's why I think I went on for a good like 10, 15 years without ever being properly diagnosed, and getting to the point where I did last year. And then finally I got the diagnosis, but it runs in my family. So I was genetically predispositioned that potentially I would have it. So there is bipolar 1 and bipolar 2. So bipolar 1 is like really extreme manic, where you're up for days and days and days on end. And then you have really depressive episodes where you just can't get out of bed for days and days. I'm bipolar 2. So I'm more depressive, but I can't have manic episodes. My manic episodes just aren't as extreme. So it goes back to like, I can't just go on an antidepressant to treat my symptoms. And when I was doing that back previous to being hospitalized, I had given up at some point, because I'm like, here I am trying to help myself and reaching out for help and trying to go on medication, and everything I'm trying isn't working for me. Like, screw this. I'm done trying. Like, I'm going to go back to self-medicating and take care of myself my own way. I'm stubborn. But then I kind of realized that, oh, I do have like these other symptoms. And once again, it goes back to that I'm very lucky that I'm self-aware. So I had gone in, found a psychiatrist, and I had told her, these are kind of my symptoms. Bipolar runs in my family. And I tried to go on all these medications that I've taken in years previous, and like, this is what's happening to me. So then at that point, as soon as I was put on like a mood stabilizer along with an antidepressant, it really leveled me out. But without that mood stabilizer, going on an antidepressant is just going to be a fail for me every time. So I have to like double medicate. So that's kind of the difference about it. But yeah, people joke around all the time, like, oh, you're so bipolar, because it's like, they think extreme, like angry, sad, happy, sad, like your moods just really change a lot, but that's definitely not what it's like. And I'm grateful that, I know that there's people that have bipolar 1 that's probably a little bit harder to manage. But again, to me, it's like someone that has anxiety. It's just a title to the name of what I have. And I don't take it really personally, me, when somebody says things like that. I try to educate people when they do say things like that. I'm more than open to always be like, well, actually, like, I am really bipolar and this is what it looks like. So it's kind of offensive for you to say that to me. Or like, you need to be a little bit more careful that you could potentially go say that to somebody and like really hurt their feelings. That's not how I took it, but so I think it's important then when you do have those things, maybe that person's not going to listen to me and go say it 20 more times and hurt a bunch of other people. But I feel like it's part of my job to like educate that person. Like, it's important for us to stick up for ourselves and be like, that hurts my feelings that like you're sitting here and using it as a joke when like this is something I have to deal with on a daily basis. And it's not something I chose for myself. It's my genetics. Like, this is just how I am. So that's kind of how I handle all of that, I guess.
So you explain it to them like they're 5 years old. So not only do they, they feel they got like a guilt trip going on, but also they feel stupid too at the same time when you explain it to them.
I don't mean to make them feel guilty and stupid, but again, my favorite thing is common sense is not that common. So I feel like really what makes sense to me could not make any sense to you. And I feel like it's so important to like break things down to a 5-year-old level in any type of communication conversation, because everybody just thinks differently, and that's okay. I feel like it's easy for us to like expect, like, even how I love somebody, like somebody else needs to love me back the same way. Well, they could still love me equally as much, but love me in a different way. And so I feel like everything kind of in life works like that. So I feel like, yes, I do break it down for them. Very simple. 1 + 1 is 2.
Whenever I find myself having to explain something to somebody who has no idea about the topic or the subject, I always explain to them like they're 5 years old, because I don't really I'm not one that likes to repeat himself. So,
no.
So I will literally break it down like, okay, this does this because of this, and then this does this because of this, and give them step by step, flashcards.
And like, again, I don't think it's like to make them feel stupid, but it like goes back to that stigma where potentially they've been raised for 30 years hearing people like, you're bipolar, ha ha ha. And then like that's been ingrained into their brain and dug into their brain for so many years that like now it just makes sense to them that way. So it has to be like broken down to like so like minimalistic that like it's dumbed down for them, because the society has made them believe that it's okay to say those things, or like this is what makes sense, when like that's not reality. And if it's not something they have to deal with, or like someone personally close to them in their life has to deal with, I understand that they don't understand. So I don't ever take it personally. Me, I could understand where somebody would, though it's taken me a long time to like get the tough skin that I have nowadays, I guess. So, or like just not let things bother me as much, because it's just a waste of my energy. And again, I feel like if somebody wants to be rude, like that's a personal problem, not mine. So
it really took everything in me just now not to laugh when you did the little imitation voice and the little ha ha. It took everything in me not to laugh.
Sorry.
No, it's funny because that is how people are. It's just I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The laugh in addition to that was really funny to me. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. I totally do that. I realize that I'm doing it. Like, now that you said that I did it, I'm like, oh yeah, I totally did that.
That's hilarious.
My bad.
No, so
I'm glad you enjoyed it, Alec.
So I wanted to ask you, when was the most recent time where you felt like that things were becoming a little bit more overwhelming for you, and that you weren't able to like handle things yourself, like you felt things slipping away, kind of like the last time that you kind of felt like you would need to go back to the hospital?
I would say I've been pretty lucky that in the past year I haven't felt like to the point that I've had to go back to the hospital. I feel like I've been managing pretty well, but I feel like what's helped me do that is that like I know that like I'm entitled to feel however I want, and like I'm gonna have good and bad days, and like having a bad day is not a failure. Like if I wake up today and I'm depressed or like I'm really anxious, A, my whole day doesn't have to go on like that. B, tomorrow doesn't have to happen for me like that. And like I take my day at that point. I woke up anxious or depressed this morning. I just have to get through today 1 hour at a time. What happened yesterday is done. Tomorrow may never come. All I have to do is focus on getting through this next hour, and then the next hour, and then the next hour. And maybe that's how I have to go through my whole entire day when I feel like that. But for me, that kind of keeps me on track. And just that reminder of like, it's okay to have a bad day. You're not going to necessarily spiral completely back out of control and go back into full blown depression because you have a bad day. where that was like my mentality for a long time, that like, oh no, like I'm waking up anxious again. Like, am I going to have full blown anxiety now in 5 days and like start having night sweats again and like clenching my fists and like, having horrible night terrors and all this other like, but I know now that that's not true. And it's okay to like allow myself to feel these things, where I think because out of that fear, like I suppressed them before, that I felt like, oh, if I acknowledge this, like it's just going to get worse. It's such a negative thing that then I would get stuck. But now I'm like, it's okay to have a bad day. Like, it's okay to be depressed. Or like I said earlier, it's okay if I have to go back to the hospital one day. That's not a failure to me. I think it takes a brave person to have to ask for that help and to put themselves in that situation. Especially for me, the first time I was hospitalized, I think I was maybe between 14 and 16. I had a similar episode where I had reached out to my dad and I told my dad that I just like really felt like I didn't want to live anymore. I didn't have an attempt, but like that's where I was starting to go. And so my parents hospitalized me, and it was like super traumatic for me. Like to this day, I have PTSD from it. And I swore I would never, ever go back. So like, even when I admitted myself this past year, as soon as I like got into the hospital, and granted, I sent myself there, like I asked for this. So like, as soon as I get there and I'm on that floor and I go into that room and I'm alone in that room, I have like a full blown panic attack. Like I was like, why did I do this? Now I'm trapped here. Now I can't leave even if I want to. Like there's no taking this back. I'm spiraling that like there's all these people sitting in the other room. They're going to judge me. I can't go out there. Why am I here? Like I'm so messed up. All of these horrible thoughts spiraling out of control. And I feel like it all stemmed back from this very first experience when I was hospitalized. But at some point I had to kind of be like, okay, I can go in there. Like I can do this. It's not as bad as I think it is. And I had to really push myself to get out of that room and like out of my comfort zone to go sit in that room with all these other people and remind myself like everybody's here for the same reason or something similar. So I feel like for the most part, it should be a judgment-free zone. And so that's what I did. But it was really hard for me because that first time I went was just awful. So awful. Like I swore I would never, ever go back. It took me 20 years to go back, but I should have probably gone back other times in between that. But I feel like I was so traumatized from that first time that like, it just was such a horrible thing for me that I was like, I just can't ever do it. Like, it's never going to be beneficial to me because it was so horrible the first time.
So there is a stigma around it. But I just want to say, like, for people out there that are thinking about, like, if you feel like you're at the point where you need to go to get hospitalized, you need to go get intensive inpatient treatment, then you need to go. I mean, you shouldn't feel ashamed for needing help. Everybody needs help. There's different levels of help that people need, but if your help means that you have to go get hospitalized for a few days, then you need to go. You need to make sure you take care of yourself. Don't. And a lot of times we care about what other people think about this. They're not living your life. You are living your own life.
Yes.
A lot of people feel ashamed for needing help, and it's like, to me, it just doesn't make sense, because the people that are trying to shame you for needing help, most of the time, don't give a damn about you, honestly. I mean, they're just along for the ride. I mean, some family members, obviously you got close family that care about you, more than likely, friends, more than likely. But as far as like outside noise, outside of that, it doesn't matter what they think about you. You are living your life. You need to do what's necessary for you. If you have to go get hospitalized, if you need to go get intensive inpatient treatment around the clock for a week, were you there for a week, Jackie?
Yeah, I was inpatient for a week, and then I was like intensive outpatient for, I want to say, like over a month.
If you have to go through that, then you need to go through that. Ashley Simone says, I've been hospitalized twice, and like you said, it can save your life because it has saved mine. Thank you for speaking on that. I mean, like I said, I think it takes a brave person to ask for help. And I feel like everyone has to have their own boundaries when it comes to their mental health, where it's okay that like you don't have to tell people that you take medication, or like it's okay to not tell people where you were when you go back to work. It's no one's business. But if you want to tell people, that's okay too. Like I'm very open, and like I don't care if anyone wants to judge me for any of this stuff, or if they don't understand and they're like uneducated about it, that's not my problem. And like I'm not going to feel any type of way. But I also feel like on the other end of the spectrum, it's just as much anyone's prerogative to not tell people and only tell somebody that's close that they can trust, because they don't want that negativity brought upon them, or people to judge them, or people to look at them differently at work. So I think for everybody, it's kind of, when it comes to that stuff, like everyone has to personalize it to like what works best for them, who they want to tell and who they don't want to tell. There's no like right or wrong answer. You're right, Jackie. There's not a right or wrong answer. I just wanted to say, before we go too much further, I wanted to switch gears a little bit. Last week you told me how you went to get treatment. You went to something that's known as sound therapy.
Yeah, vibration therapy.
Sound
Um,
vibration therapy. Yeah. So can you
yes.
elaborate a little bit on what that is for the audience?
So I've always been very into like holistic medicine and like treating things holistically as much as you can. Obviously, like when it comes to mental health, there's some medications you have to take. But like I told Alex at one point, I don't really think that there's like one size fits all when it comes to therapy. You have to kind of find what works for you. And for years and years and years, I sat in a therapist's office and got nothing out of it and wasted time and money. And like that just wasn't working for me. So at this point, I'm grateful that I have this podcast. Just want to say that it's every week when I'm on here and go into the chat, it's almost like therapy and therapeutic for me. And then I've started doing some holistic things. So the sound vibration therapy that I went to the other week, you're in a room with other people. It's like a group session. And then the guy that teaches them, he does private sessions as well. So when I went, I want to say it was maybe 15 people in the room. It's kind of like a meditation. So you lay down on the floor on a yoga mat. They have pillows, blankets. You get yourself nice and comfortable. And the guy that teaches the class has a bunch of crystal bowls and like a gong and different types of tools that he uses. And you can feel the vibrations go through the floor as you're laying there, and he plays the music from the different things. And what you're supposed to focus on is that like it's shaking up all the cells in your body, and that all the cells in your body are like working for you, not against you. And to really like allow yourself to like get a release from it and go into meditation and relax. And so I know like when I was doing it, I had like a really major release at one point, which this was the first time I had ever done this. So afterwards I like asked the guy, and I guess it's normal. But at one point, I don't know exactly what sound he played, but for whatever reason, it like really just hit me really hard. And I felt this rush of vibration from like the bottom of my feet all the way up through my body. And I just started crying. And he said a lot of times, like when we're suppressing things and holding things in, that was my release. That, like, for whatever reason, when I heard that particular sound and felt that specific vibration, it like released this tension that I had been holding in. And when I left there, I literally have not felt that good. And I don't even know how long. Like, I just felt really happy and at peace and like almost energized and like high off of it to a certain extent. Like, it was a great feeling. And I was really grateful that, again, like I allowed the universe to bring somebody into my life that invited me to go to it with her. And I met this guy, and I've gone and done, he also does private sessions to do Reiki. So I don't know a lot about it. I'm kind of learning some more. Initially, when I had looked into it, my daughter, she will be 15 at the end of September, has ADHD, and she also has depression and anxiety, thanks to me. But it's good because I can relate to her, I guess. But Reiki is like really good for ADHD as well, because it's like another meditation thing, and it's kind of just working through like processing all of this negative energy out of your body. So when I went to him, I had told him when I did a private session that, I had all this trauma and like went into what specifically my trauma was. And again, I'm really self-aware. So I feel like it's easy for me to go in and be like, these are the things that I harbor. Like sometimes I let things that somebody said to me 20 years ago, like I hold it in. And today I'm better about it, but like I'm still carrying that thing from 20 years ago when I wasn't that good about it. And it eats away at me. And I feel like it feeds into my mental health then. And so you lay down and he works through and like moves your energy around. And like, even when I came out of that, like I felt so good. Like he said that he put like not a bubble because a bubble pops. So he said he put a shield at the end of it, like around me to let things kind of bounce off me as I went throughout my week. And things, he was like, you'll notice that things are not going to bother you as much when people say things to you or something happens to you. It's kind of just going to bounce off of you. And like, honestly, that's how I felt since I've gone. So as part of my mental health recovery, I want to go now once a month to see him privately, and then once a month to go to a group session because I like to like feed off of other people's energy. And I think it's important to like be around other people that are in the same headspace as you and things of that sort. But as part of my recovery, like that's kind of the direction more that I'm going in as opposed to like sitting in a therapist's office. Like that just personally doesn't work for me.
So I want to ask, like, what kind of sounds do they play? Like, is there like
So they have a bunch of different huge crystal bowls. And they take like this stick through the inside of the crystal bowl and like spin it around, and it makes music and it vibrates. So like you're laying on the floor, so you literally like feel the vibrations of the thing. And then he has, I think it's called a hand pan. So it sounds like a bunch of waves, and he'll come individually like over each person, and like um it's like a circle shaped, it's big, and he'll like swirl it around you, and you feel like just this rush come over you as you hear what sounds like, to me, I interpret it as like what waves would sound like if you're at the beach, like really close. So he takes time to go over each individual person at certain points. But for the most part, it's like these crystal bowls and different type of material bowls that like he'll take this tool and swipe through the inside of them, and then they vibrate and they make different types of octaves of noise and vibrations into the ground. And you're supposed to like allow those vibrations to go through your body and through all of your cells in your body to like realign you and like give you more positive energy and to release that negative energy out of you.
That does sound pretty interesting. Jackie was trying to convince me to go check it out, guys. I'm still,
You're gonna go.
I'm still thinking about it. I might have to check my schedule. Let me see if I could fit in laying down on the ground and letting some guy spin a bowl around my head.
It's great though. I mean, it's worth trying once. I'm all about like try everything once. So it's not for everybody, for sure. Again, there's not one size fits all. Like it's something that works for me. I think meditation is great for people that have anxiety, especially. Like I try to meditate as much as I can. There's always room for improvement. I'm always learning and transitioning and trying to, do it more often, or, catch myself in moments of serious anxiety and like know that I need to put on a specific meditation at that point in time. But I think for me, where I struggled with meditation for a long time is that people think that like when you're meditating, like you have to just have a silent mind. And like if you're anxious, that's basically impossible. Like your mind's wandering all over the place. So like that's probably not going to work for you. But that's okay. You don't have to lay there during the session, or you don't have to sit and listen to a meditation on your phone and be completely silent minded. Your mind's going to wander, but that's where you just need to turn yourself back to the meditation and focus back on that. And if it wanders 20 times in 20 minutes, that's okay. Like you're not failing at meditation if that's what happens to you. And I think that a lot of people get discouraged and don't want to do it then because their mind will wander. They're anxious. You're thinking all of these things, and like then you're like, what do I have to do tomorrow? Like what's happening next? Like this happened earlier, and like I feel really bad about it, and am I going to be able to sleep tonight? And this, that, and the other. I'm going to give up. I don't want to meditate now because I'm not even paying attention to it anyways. But I think that that's what the practice is. Allow yourself to think that thing, but then come back to the meditation. Even if you go back and forth, it's practice. Like it's something you have to constantly do. And like, no one's going to do it once and just be Buddha. That would be great. But like, that's just kind of not how it works. So I think that's important for people to know, because I know when I'm really anxious, I put on a meditation all the time. And sometimes it doesn't work for me. I'm like in full blown panic attack. So, but sometimes, a lot of times it does work for me. But again, it's something that I constantly have to practice and like make it part of my recovery and part of my routine to like really allow myself that, okay, I'm at a scale of a 2 on a scale from 1 to 10 anxiety. I'm going to meditate. Now, potentially 3 days from now, I might be at a 4 anxiety wise. I'm going to meditate. So eventually when I have a day when I'm at a 9 of anxiety, I've meditated so many times when I've been at a 2 and a 4 that now I can handle it a little bit better now that I'm at a 9. So I think it's important to like practice all these tools and like coping skills that we use when we're at a 1 or a 2, like we're having a slightly off day, but we're not laying in bed depressed and not want to shower for 3 days. So that when you get to that point, it's easier than in more of like a habit almost to go back to, well, this is what I've been doing that's been working for me daily when I feel kind of off. Like now I just know naturally to kind of go back to those things. And I know that that type of stuff has really worked for me. So
for me personally, I got like an area I go to that's not too far away from my house. That's like a calming area. It's like kind of an open land. I go over there. I sit on my car, and sometimes I just read over there. Or for me personally, music is really what calms me down. Like I have music. I said it before a couple weeks ago. I'm gonna say it again. Music is literally like I go everywhere. I always have headphones on when I go grocery shopping, when I go to the gym, obviously, when I'm working. I mean, hell, if I could, I would literally not to have music play. I would have it playing as much as possible, because there's something about it, man. It really calms me down. Keeps me level headed.
So no, definitely. I remember when you said that the other week, and it's funny because in the midst of like before I was hospitalized last year, I had completely stopped listening to music. And in the midst of it, I didn't realize that I would drive in my car. I would never play music. And like, I love music too. So at the time I didn't realize that was like a warning sign for me. And then after the fact, when I got out of the hospital and I was like going to intensive outpatient every day, and I would be in my car and I'd be listening to music and be like full of life and feeling so much better, then it like clicked for me that I was like, in the midst of being super depressed, like I stopped listening to music. Like I cut myself off from things that I loved. So now for me too, even sometimes like I'm at home a lot. Like I haven't been working for the past year. So it's easy for me to get stuck in the house and like not ever want to leave. But even some days, like I know that if I get in my car and I drive 5 minutes up the street to Walgreens and 5 minutes home and I play like two of my favorite songs in that time period, my mood will change. And then I can come back into the house and like do all the other things that I need to do. So I totally agree. Music is super important.
Jackie, I just want to thank you first and foremost for coming on tonight, sharing your story, to giving us a little bit of encouragement, for people that are considering going and taking the steps to getting hospitalized or, going to go seek intensive inpatient treatment. Because, again, if you feel like that's what's necessary, then you need to do it. It's all about what's most important for you, to be healthy and have a stable mind, have a healthier way of living. It's, again, like I said it earlier, a lot of times people only act in ways because they feel like that they'll get judged by others. They don't want to do certain things because they feel like they'll be looked at differently. It's not about it's not them that matters. It's you that matters. It's your life. So, again, Jackie, thank you for sharing that. I want to ask
Thank you for having me, Alec.
I want to ask you if you had any last words for the audience.
No, I just appreciate everybody coming on tonight and listening to me. I hope that anything I said helped somebody, and that's pretty much it, I guess. I'll be in the chat next week along with everybody else. So it's been great being on, though, Alec. I really appreciate you, after I reached out to you to let me come on here and tell my story and hopefully, help one or two people or at least have somebody relate to how I feel. So I appreciate it a lot. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you again, Jackie. Ashley says you were great. Thank you for your story. Yeah, I mean, like I said, you could potentially help others just by sharing your story and your insight. So, again, we will be back next Thursday to have a conversation with you guys. I hope everybody has a good week. If you need help, reach out to me. Reach out to somebody around you. You guys know where to find me. And again, I'll talk to you guys later.
Good night, everybody.